What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a cornerback for this year's draft. If the Lions can somehow land, I think they'd be getting a beast. So let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know DoseOfDion. He put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we're talking about a draft prospect. And today, it's about Elijah Molden, the cornerback from the Washington Huskies. So today, really since I woke up, I've been watching cornerbacks and safeties in this year's draft. I went through a lot of guys. You know, I was looking for late round gems, mid round picks, how these guys could fit the scheme. And I was kind of just flying through players. And one guy that I spent a lot of time on was Javon Holland out of Oregon. So I was watching, or Oregon, however you say it. I was watching Javon Holland for a while. And I was like, okay, I like it. You know, I was looking at him because he could play the nickel position. He also played some safety, but really looking at that nickel position, it seemed like he played there a lot. And I was like, okay, I like it. You know, he's a very physical corner, but he's not like staying super connected with the guy constantly. He's a really, really nice player, and I would be perfectly fine with drafting him, and he's got nice upside, but he's not like staying connected. So after watching a ton of guys, you know, and I'm rolling through where people are having players mocked, I see Elijah Molden's name pop up. I'm like, man, I haven't talked about Elijah Molden in a while. I think the last time we thought about him was when we did with mock off season. So it's been a hot minute. And I looked at him a little bit back then, but I didn't really like, you know, dive into it. It's like, okay, you know, I've looked at all these guys. Why not take a look back at Elijah Molden? We're going to put you with Amani Oruwariye and put you with Jeff Okudah. And these will be like our big three that we're going to develop. And I mean, that would be just... that'd be beautiful. So let's talk about Elijah Molden a little bit if you don't know who he is. Number 3 at 5'10", 190 pounds. Let's start with his two biggest knocks first, then we'll get into the stats and what I saw on the field. The two biggest knocks that come against him, or the two red flags, are his size and his top end speed. Apparently at his pro day, he ran a 4.58, which he said that he doesn't get on social media. He doesn't make a big deal about it. That is one of the biggest concerns for people, is that top end speed, that if he was on the outside against a burner, that he wouldn't be able to keep up in coverage. And the also big knock is the size. At 5'10", 190, people worry about him lining up on the outside. But so far in college, he's been mainly a slot cornerback. That's pretty much been most of his role. While last season, 2020, he started to kind of dip into the safety role a little bit. He has shown some ability to play on the outside cornerback position, but he's been mainly a slot corner. Elijah Molden was basically asked about a position. He'd be a nickelback / safety. He could do a little bit of both there, but he also could play on the outside because that's kind of what he did at Washington. That's what he said. So really, you can play him anywhere. He feels like he's just starting to play his best football, and he wants to see where he is 5 years from now. He said he thinks he's just starting to play his best football. And by the way, 2020 to me was clearly his best season. So those two biggest knocks really haven't been seen on tape. You haven't seen issues with the size, and you really haven't seen the top end issues either, because, you know, he's playing so much at the slot position. It's more about quickness, and also, is he still able to tackle at that size? And yes, he can do both of those. So let's get into the stats, and then we'll get into what I saw on the film first, and we'll kind of dive into some of those issues. But let's get into the stats. So 2019 for me, I think, was his breakout season. And Mel Kiper, after the 2019 season, had him listed as the 13th player on his NFL draft big board for 2021. 13th. Like, that's pretty darn good. And some people look at him as a first-round prospect, first-round talent right now. Some people say third round because of those knocks. But 2019 was definitely a good season for him. 2018 was a bad, but 2019, he kind of showed up a lot. In 93 targets, he allowed 61 completions, which really isn't that much. That's under 66%. And when you're talking about a guy playing the slot cornerback position for the majority of the time, that's a very low completion percentage, because a lot of these passes are shorter, they're underneath. They're supposed to be easy to complete, but you're supposed to limit them. That's not a very high completion percentage to give up. Continuing with his numbers from 2019, he allowed 610 yards, which is about 10 yards per reception, which is kind of high. 2 touchdowns, but he had 4 interceptions. So yes, playmaking was there. He had 12 passes deflected. So yes, I mean, the playmaking was shown off, and that kind of got the excitement for Elijah Molden. He could have went to the draft there, but he decided, I'm coming back for 2021. I'm coming back for 2020, excuse me. I want to play this last year. And man, off the field, he has all the respect that you could want. I mean, from the coaches, the players, everybody. The coaches call him an extra coach on the field because he's the leader of the defense. The players love this guy, but he doesn't have the off the field red flags where you worry about some things. He's just a leader. He's a leader, and he does everything the right way. You know, he says everything the right way, and you can just tell, and he says it himself, he plays like a veteran, even though he's only 22 years old. He gives a lot of credit to his dad. Now, let's touch on his dad for a second. His dad is Alex Molden. Alex Molden was the 11th pick in the draft back in 1996 by, guess who? The New Orleans Saints. Also, Alex Molden played for the Detroit Lions. So, like Rashad Perriman, maybe we get Elijah Molden. I'm just saying, we could do it. But there are maybe some somewhat ties there. Maybe not. Maybe not. But either way. So let's get back to it. So he credits his dad for really helping him out, kind of similar to Asante Samuel Jr., who we talked about, and maybe that's why he reads the field so well. And he said, yeah, it really did help him out. But let's get into the stats. So he comes back for 2020, and to me, he played even better because he showed I could play some safety. They put him at safety, and he looked pretty good there. But then he also showed I can play a little outside, but I'm still mainly the slot guy. That's still my job as slot corner. And man, was he impressive. Oh my goodness, was this guy impressive. In 4 games, he was targeted 18 times, where he allowed 11 completions. So basically, about a little under 4 targets a game. Only 11 completions for 65 yards. 11 completions for 65 yards. That's a little bit less than 6 yards per completion. That's crazy. Less than 6 yards per completion from the slot position is just wild. 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a 44.9 passer rating. Those stats are ridiculous. And I think these stats also sum it up well. Because like I said, he plays a lot of slot corner, so I look for those underneath routes. Well, in those few years, on passes between 1 and 9 yards, he was targeted 39 times, where he allowed 24 completions. He had 5 forced incompletions and a 66.9 pass rating. That was the pass rating that he gave up on pass between 1 and 9 yards. 500 snaps. There was no slot corner that was graded higher. In the era of college football for PFF, no slot corner has ever graded higher. He has more forced incompletions than any slot corner. That's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. Now let's get on to the film side of things. Start off with the coverage first. So man-to-man coverage. All right, now man-to-man coverage, again, the knock here is that, okay, physically wise, is he going to have the size to match up with some of those bigger receivers? Well, it really hasn't shown up as an issue on tape because he's not afraid to press, not afraid to jam you at the line of scrimmage. He just doesn't play a ton on the outside, so that's still a little bit up for debate. And then that top end speed. If he's going against the burner, will he be able to keep up with him long end? Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. He might need safety help, or it might just have to go with a different matchup. But what you do know is that the quickness is there, and that's what makes up for it because, like I said, you don't see on the film this top end speed being a very big issue. Something that comes up when you look at the analytics, so that's something that Brad Holmes would be looking at. But when you watch him, you don't notice it on the film. You don't notice it because he's so talented. But in those short area routes, which a lot of slot routes are, he's very quick. He's got very quick feet, really flexible, very smooth hips, and he reacts so fast. His reaction time is so quick, and he can just jump on things. But probably my favorite thing I like about him in man coverage is what really separates him from a lot of other guys, is that he isn't super grabby, yet he can stay connected. Yet he can stay right in your hip pocket without being handsy and grabbing on. Will he chuck you and jam you at the line? Yes, he can do that. But once you get into your route, he's not going to grab you and hold on to you. He's not going to be pushing you all the way down the field. He can get right in your hip, stay right in that pocket, and effortlessly just run with you. It's that quickness off those early routes that he shuts down. And from the slot position, a lot of times, that's what you got to be able to do. Teams are going to spread you out. You got to be able to stop those early routes to quick routes. Another thing, you get routes that break down, plays that break down, quarterback runs out of the pocket, wide receivers are kind of going everywhere trying to get open. No issue there either. He can stay right in their pocket. He can run with them just like it's a design route. In man-to-man coverage, he is extremely talented. If he's asked in a long route to stay with a guy man-to-man, maybe he could get burnt by a speedster. Maybe that's possible, but you just don't see that a lot at the slot because it's usually, hey, get open quickly and we're going to try to get you the football. And for him, his quickness really, really makes him look very good, and it doesn't show issues that much on tape. And then you get the zone coverage, and you can make the case he's even better in zone. Well-versed with multiple zone defenses, and for the Lions, I expect him to play a lot of man, but they'll mix in some zone, so it's going to be important. But being a 4-year senior, well-versed, like Asante Samuel, who just has a great feel for the field. He just has a beautiful feel. He knows where things are. He baits quarterbacks, but he reacts so quickly. And even in man coverage, he breaks off his assignment to make a play. In zone, what I like is that he's able to stay connected, feel his player, but also keep his eyes on the quarterback. And that's what's supposed to happen, but he does that. He understands route concepts, so he kind of can predict what the route concept is going to go to, but he's in position super, super early. He jumps down on things, and in man coverage, like I said, he'll jump off his assignment to go make a play if the play is there, if he could go make a play. He just always has the head on his swivel. He has his head up, and in zone coverage, he's been in a lot of different zone schemes. You don't see him out of place. You don't see him lost. Here's the play that I love. You just kind of like eyes in the back of his head, reading the quarterback's eyes, kind of sensing that there's someone behind him. And as he just watches the quarterback the whole time, gets himself in position to jump back and make an incredible play. Just a beautiful athletic play on this one. Now, apparently this one didn't count because there was an offsides, but that's big time. That's a touchdown saving play. You can make a case he's a better zone coverage guy, which is tough because he's really good at man coverage as well. So one more point I'll throw in here is very aggressive at the point of attack. Maybe this is like something that slot cornerbacks, I guess, just need because it brings me some Justin Coleman vibes of, just punching at the football. When the ball's in his hands or going for the football together, very aggressive to get after it. I think that's why he has so many forced incompletions. That's why he has so many pass deflections. And while he also has 3 forced fumbles in 2019 because he just punches at that football. Even if the ball carrier already has it, he's going for the football. So if you don't keep that thing close to your body, he's going to rip it out. So coverage, he checks the box. Aside from those 2 concerns, really checks the box. You get him in a normal slot situation, you're going to be fine. PFF says he's he's the safest draft pick, arguably, in this class. You can make the case this is the best tackling cornerback in this draft class. He's a ball hawk by having 17 pass breakups in 2018 and 2019, 12 in 2019, 4 interceptions that basically limited everything in 2020, barely gave up anything. You're telling me that this could arguably be the best tackler? I don't believe you. Okay, how about on over 170 tackling attempts, only 22 missed tackles? Phenomenal tackler breaks down very well, and he's reliable in space. You get him one-on-one against a running back. You would think that's going to be a nightmare. You can trust him in space about as well as you can any corner. And at 5'10", 190, you would think this could be an issue. It's not an issue for him because he's not afraid. He's not hesitant. He'll shoot down like an absolute cannon on blitz plays. He had 5.5 tackles for loss in 2019. But like I said, there's no hesitancy. He sees the play, he basically smells it out, snuffs it out, and he's down to make a play on the football. He'll hit you hard, he'll pop you. Sure, limitations with size. Also length. Sometimes it causes him not to be able to reach a guy. And yes, he's not the biggest guy, so sometimes he can get broken through. He's a heat-seeking missile as a tackler that would just fly down and make some plays, and he's not afraid against anybody to make the hit. He's not afraid. He's not going to back off and shy away from a challenge. And when I look at Jeff Okudah and I say, wow, this is a phenomenal tackler as a coverage guy, as a cornerback, I just couldn't imagine him and Elijah Molden both out there at the same time. I mean, those guys can tackle. These guys can tackle. You would have no worries whatsoever with a play going the outside. Can my cornerbacks hold up? No problem. He'll be able to go and make that tackle. He'll make that tackle because he's one of the better ones in this class. Size can have limitations. Block shedding, taking out bigger running backs. There's going to be limitations. You're going to get your tackles broken. But for his size, he plays bigger than his size. Time that size came into a factor as a run defender is when he's going against someone that's way bigger than him. And sometimes he'll try to lay the boom. Bigger guys, sometimes it can just be difficulty to bring down because he's just not that big. Getting pushed out of the play by bigger offensive linemen, guys like that, it's hard for him to shed. It's more about athleticism for him shedding. He's not going to, hold up an offensive lineman, so that'll throw him out of the play. Really outsized, but in space, you can trust him, and he's going to do whatever he can to get the guy down. He's going to try to bring him down no matter what it takes. He's not shying away from contact either. He checks those boxes as well. Block shedding can be an issue. Maybe you get him on some screens. That could be a problem. He really has to rely on his athleticism to get by early because if he gets picked up, there can be problems. But you can tell he's just playing with a lot of heart. So as a fourth-year senior that off the field has no issues, no red flags, people, say that he's such a leader and he's a coach on the defense. He gets guys in the right positions. Then you have no injuries, so there's no red flags there either. Knock on wood for him. I mean, there's just nothing really that scares me about his game because the things that people say are issues, they don't show up to me on film. I just don't see it. And maybe if you get him outside against a speedster or a very big receiver, you could see those problems come up more. He started to show you versatility. Hey, I can play some safety, and he's not bad at it because he has such a good feel for the field that you're like, okay, maybe at some point he could develop into that. A very limited snaps that he did play a safety, it seemed like he'd be his best in a split safety package, and that's what the Lions are expected to run next season anyways, because he doesn't really have maybe that range to cover, the full field if he was a single high, but because he reads the quarterback so well in zone coverage, he's a great job at that, getting himself in the right position. But he also, again, since he's such a willing tackler, he'll shoot down and make some plays in the box. So as a safety, that actually could be a very bright future for him. A lot of people compare him to Tyrann Mathieu coming out of the draft, maybe just with a little bit less power, and we know he's a safety. So it could be something like that down the road. I mean, there's potential there. So I think there's versatility in at least those two spots. And corner, even though we haven't seen much at the wide corner position, the tool suggests that against some matchups at least he would be able to do it. Cornerbacks take a long time to adjust. I think he'd adjust faster than a lot of guys because he's been playing college for 4 years, because he just improved every single year, and just how dominant he looked and just how smooth he looks. And like I said, he's not relying on athleticism. He's not relying on, I got to be super grabby. He just has such good movement skills. He's got such good technique. They praise him for how much film he watches, how much study he does before games to make sure that he's ahead of everything. Same thing that they loved about Jeff Okudah, right? He studies all the time. Same thing that goes out there with Elijah Molden. He's a veteran in a 22-year-old's body that can play. He'll be able to venture out and more. Alexander is not a big corner either, and he's an outside guy. We don't need an outside guy right now. We need more of a slot now. But you can have him be a slot now, outside later. I mean, the thing is, he just has talent to do it. But if you need him at slot, you can do it. Maybe safety down the road. There just isn't red flags here. There's not things that concern me like they do with other guys. Slot cornerback position, as much as over the years it's been very underappreciated, and it's been, I think, by averages, the lowest paid position on the defensive side of the ball, that won't stay like that forever. And we've seen, some big deals that have been happening with the slot cornerback position. Saw Troy Hill get a pretty nice contract this offseason. We know the Lions paid Justin Coleman a ton of money. Kenny Moore, he got a pretty nice payday. And then we've seen, more recently, we've seen higher draft picks of guys that come out of the draft, a lot more of slot guys that have adjusted maybe to other things like Minka, like Jair Alexander, players like that, Derwin James, that have been first-round picks. So I don't know if he'd be a first-round pick this year, but if you're talking, day two, if the Lions could sign this guy someone in day two, I think it's fine. You're talking about a guy in Aaron Glenn who is coming from a defense with the New Orleans Saints who ran mainly nickel most of the time, where they have multiple corners on the field. It's a 4-2-5 defense, so you have to have that extra cornerback on the field. And if you actually look at wins above replacement, it's almost as important as it is to have a shutdown cornerback on the field. By far, this is the best slot cornerback in this draft because he can check all the boxes. Some slot cornerbacks, they can't go down and make a tackle, so you have issues there. Slot cornerbacks can't play zone. He can play zone. Some slots can't play man. He can do that. He checks all the boxes. There's not that many slot corners in the league that can do everything from that slot cornerback position. There really aren't that many guys in this draft that I feel like are proven that they can be a good slot corner at the next level. Maybe there's some guys with talent on the outside that, okay, yeah, he could probably play slot, but in terms of I've seen slot at college level and I'm like, oh wow, he's really talented. There's not that many guys out there for me. I mean, Aaron Robinson is one of those guys I think that some people like. I like this guy better, personally. I mean, Kerry Vincent, I didn't really love it. Even Javon Holland, I was looking at him because I'm like, okay, safety, slot, versatility. But Holland and me wasn't staying with anybody. He was kind of just waiting for 5 yards. You would chuck him, and he'd lose him. He was a great tackler. He was very, attacking, but the guy doesn't stay with anybody. He was giving up completions because he couldn't stay in their hip. This guy has that short area quickness. You want to hear a stat? 60% of the time last year, NFL defenses were in nickel packages. 60% of the time. All right, so most of the time now, teams are just playing nickel. So you have to have a slot. There's no less value between grabbing a slot or a linebacker that may not be out there every play, or a safety that may not be out there every play. There's no less value anymore in today's NFL because you just have to have guys out there that can play those positions. Like I said, with Washington, the guy rarely ever came off the field because even though he was a slot, when there was no receiver for him to match up with, he just bounced into the box. And the Lions are going to do that some next season. They play a lot of times a safety in the box. Molden can do it because he can tackle. Maybe that's Will's role, maybe that's Walker's role, and they don't want to try that. But I'm just saying he could do that. So for them, he didn't come off the field. I know college is different from the NFL, but he just didn't come off the field because the guy's not out there. Fine, you slide into the slot, you can blitz, you're scary there. Or you can put you at safety. We'll find a spot because there's just too much talent and you're such a leader of this defense that we don't want to take you off the field. Keeping you with some numbers here. 67% of the time in 2018, teams had 3 receivers on the field. 2/3 of the time, teams had 3 receivers on the field. You go back to 2010, that was down to 46. So you can see the tremendous jump that the NFL has taken. Also, Chris Spielman quoted this. It's probably the hardest position to play on the field. And Chris Spielman has helped the Detroit Lions through a lot of things. He recognizes how difficult it is to play slot. Troy Aikman said himself, some outside corners, they can't play slot because it's just, there's no guessing. You don't have time. There's no distance between you and the quarterback. You're right there. You got to be on top of it. It's bothering to me if you couldn't find a role for this guy. Seriously, it would be. I mean, I know that's a knock on him, but if you couldn't find a role for this guy, I don't know what your defense is doing. Their speed, a little bit concerning, I guess. But, I mean, if you let the 40 time alone take you out of drafting a guy, you might just be completely missing out on a great prospect. It's the same thing that scared people away from Dantzler. Didn't scare me because I was like, I just know he can play. And it's not that slow of a time. 4.58 really isn't that bad, right? It's the difference between, running with no pads on in a straight line and playing football. And he has the footwork, he has the skill set, and he has the knowledge to just see the entire field. It just tells me he's going to be able to play. Knock on wood, but no injury scares, well-rounded player, no off-the-field concerns, and he's from a school that has been putting out some top defensive backs recently. Count me in. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.